I'm excited to show you everything that I can show you about Astro in the time that we have. As an introduction to myself, my name is Cassidy Williams. You can find me at Cassidoo, Cassidoo, on most things. You could also Google Cassidy Williams, and you'll find me and a Scooby Doo character, and I'm not the Scooby Doo character. And currently, I work at Netlify, and it's a very fun place to work. And I mostly focus on new frameworks, open source stuff, and a lot of React things. And Astro is something that kind of came on my radar somewhat somewhat recently, and when I saw that it was announced, it seemed like something that would solve a lot of problems that I had, and so I'm excited to talk about it. And I also am excited to show you that I totally know how to use PowerPoint, because whenever someone tells me how to use slides, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I can totally do all kinds of cool stuff with slides. I know how to use slides a ton, and I love doing presentations with slides." Check that out. Yeah. Anyway, this is a presentation about Astro, and those are all the slides I have. I'm not very good at using slides. Tricked ya. Ha! Ha! So I'm going to be showing you some code instead, because that makes more sense to me. Um, So I'm going to be pulling up a starter project that I made for Astro. It is based on the actual Astro starter project that comes with the framework, with a few other little things built in. And so if you'd like to actually check out Astro for yourself, you can go to astro.build. And astro.build is something that I will plop in the chat. And once again, if you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to ask them, and I will try to answer all of them. Um, but if you would like to actually see the starter project that I'm using, it's under my GitHub, which once again, it's github.com/Cassidoo. Cassidoo is my handle for all the things. And then I made sure that I tried to make updates to it so that it could be the most recently updated repo. Let me just go Astro in here. It is not that one. It is Astro Netlify Starter. And so if you go to Astro Netlify Starter on my GitHub, github.com/Cassidoo Astro Netlify Starter, that is the project that it will be based on. And also, this isn't updated. Oh, it is. Okay, it's fine. It's just some of the files haven't been updated. We're gonna just roll with this because I'm not sure what's happening there. Anyway, okay, so Astro Netlify Starter. This project, it is a Astro starter project, and all it is it shows you this plain page right here. And so this plain page right here, it has a simple React counter that goes up and down, and it shows you the folder structure, and that is it. And so I wanted to talk through all of the different parts of this project, as well as just Astro in general. The current version of Astro is it's like 0.20.11. And so it's still very early. We haven't hit V1 yet, but I do think V1 is coming out very soon. Um, and it's really kind of like a hot new framework where it's all about shipping less client-side JavaScript. And when it comes to shipping less client-side JavaScript, this is something near and dear to my heart, because as much as I love React, again, I talk about how I really like using React. If you ever want to make like a React single page application, that is a lot of JavaScript that has to run in the browser, and to make a page function, and it's like a div that is loaded and then JavaScript that populates it. And then if you use a framework like Next, for example, Next is very cool. You can generate some really great static sites with it, and some more enhanced sites with it, but it ships a lot of JavaScript to the browser by default. And Astro ships no JavaScript to the browser by default, which is something that kind of threw me off as I was experimenting with it, but it'll make sense a little bit as we continue to go on. So for what comes out of the box, it actually comes with quite a bit without you having to install anything. And the first thing that I want to talk about is Astro style components. And so Astro style components, I'm actually going to make a new one in here just to explain it. And I'm going to call this uh, demo.astro, because I am not creative apparently. Okay. So there are two areas of an Astro component. I like to call them just area A and area B to keep it clean. So area A, starts with just this little bit of front matter, kind of like in a lot of markdown files where you might have some front matter to explain what type of blog post you have or something. You have a front matter section. And in here, you could do something like import my component from, and then I don't know, my component dot astro. I don't know, something like that. I'm making this up. And then I could say, let name is equal to Cassidy. Let food is some kind of array. And we'll just say pizza and cake because what other food is there? And so anyway, in this front matter area A, you put your JavaScript and you can run all kinds of neat JavaScript expressions and it's pretty nice. Area B after this is the HTML. And so you can have a plain HTML file where inside of here you could say like you want to have a head, and inside of the head you'll have your title, and then I'll just say hello world like this. And I just saw that the IDE is a little pixelated. Let me know if I should make my font a little bit bigger or anything. I am happy to. Okay. So anyway, you have all of this HTML in here, and what's cool about it is you can actually use the JavaScript that you've created up here. And so because I have name Cassidy, I could say have an H1 in here and say name, and then Cassidy was here will render on the page. And actually, I'm going to comment this import out so that way we can show this page. And I'm going to go to /demo. Look at that. It works. It's exciting. Okay. So it's just HTML enhanced with some JavaScript expressions. So it's a lot like JSX. It's not exactly JSX, but it's like JSX. And I can do more stuff that's JavaScripty as well, or JSXy as well, where let's just say I want to make some kind of list, and then inside of this list, I'm going to have food dot map, and then inside of here I'm gonna render, oh look at that, thanks GitHub Copilot, you're the best. Okay, and then look at that, pizza and cake. That's not what's supposed to happen. We want to have, this is why AI isn't that good. Okay, there we go. Pizza and cake. Voila. So anyway, you can render your JavaScript expressions and it will work on the page and it will be beautiful. And once again, you can import different components as well. And so I mentioned that I have a counter component. I can import counter from counter like that. Oh, .jsx. Why are you yelling at me? Because I didn't name you right. Okay. Stop yelling. This should work. Never do anything live, kids. Okay. I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to do this. Let me make sure that the tour works. Okay, the tour works. This is my fault then. I'm going to try counter one more time. Sorry. Counter and then .jsx. That should just work. It does. It was just mad. Okay, and so then I can put the counter on the page. And look at that. It's a simple React counter. So pizza cake does sound intriguing. You're right, Eka, and I am interested in it, but we don't have time. So, like you've seen right here, there's area A and area B. Area A is your JavaScript where any kinds of scripts can happen. And then area B is your HTML, what renders on the page. And the front matter up here is fully compatible with both JavaScript and TypeScript. And so you can import any components, any Astro components, any JSX components, Vue components, React components, Svelte components. It's all just built in. And that part is really, really cool. And this is run at build time. And so if you deploy this and your site is building, anything that runs in here is going to be run as the site is building. It doesn't run when the user hits your page. And so if you want to query an API, let's just say you want to get a list of Pokemon from the Pokemon API, you can do it inside of this front matter. It'll happen at build time and it'll already be rendered to the page whenever your users hit the page. So they don't have to query that API either, which is great. And so lots of very cool stuff built in directly into that area A. And once again, area B, it's HTML until it's not. You can add in any components that you import. Once again, I did a React counter here, but let's just say I did do that tour, or I did import tour from, and then my ah, components, and then tour.astro like this, tour like this. These are just side by side. Astro and React are completely different things, and yet these components can work together. And so if I wanted to do Vue, which I'm not going to right now because I'm not confident in my abilities with Vue, I could have Vue and React living side by side in the exact same page, which is very, very neat. And you can think about how you can hydrate pages with all kinds of really interesting concepts by having these frameworks live side by side. And so I think that's very cool. I'll get into more of this later, but Astro components can also take in props. They can pay attention to what the URL is. There's a lot of really interesting things that happen here. Now, one thing that I'd like to touch on is how it actually renders things on the page, because it is showing this React counter, but I haven't clicked the buttons yet. And when I click the buttons, nothing works. And that is because, once again, React or Astro ships no JavaScript by default. So React is rendering this component, but it's not actually interactive because there's not JavaScript here. It's just showing the HTML. And so you have to hydrate it, and you have to make it happen. There's a few different ways that you can do that. And I'm going to make this a little bigger and show you all the different ways. So with this counter, you have a prop called client. And with this client, it can take in different types or modes, I guess, of rendering. And so I could do client load. And if I do client load, then when I load the page, it will work. And so this renders this component on page load. And that is it. It's kind of plain and simple there. There's also idle. And so if you want to render this page, and once the main thread is free in the browser, then this loads, or this works. It's very simple. There's also client visible. And what's cool about this one is that the JavaScript doesn't load until it's actually visible on the page. Now, in this particular instance, it doesn't really matter because it's visible on the page, because it's a very short page. But let's just say I added fish and carrot. And actually, let's not make an entire list of food. I'll just zoom in on the page. Oh, I can't zoom in that much. Okay, start naming foods. Ah, um, okay, let me say it's pineapple and coconut. And this is definitely an A plus demo. I'm glad you're all still here with me. Okay. Is this a long enough thing? You know what? I'll just add more words somewhere else. I'm going to make this a very big thing. Cassidy was here again. Okay, so we have all these headings. This is not on the page. I'm going to show you the network tab here. Okay, so as I load this, did you see that? Did you see that? I'm going to do it one more time. Okay, let me reload the page. You're not seeing the counter on the page at all, but then it's on the page and the JavaScript loaded. Ah! Okay, so that is what the visible part does. Is when the actual counter is visible on the page, when the JavaScript enabled thing is visible on the page, then the JavaScript actually loads. I think that is so neat. I when I first discovered that, I was like, oh, it's like mysteries hidden. It's so exciting. Um, so anyway, that was a lot of me talking about food, but at least you got at least some of that working. Okay, I'm going to take out these names. Okay, so you have load, idle, and visible, and I'm going to mark those here in case you missed them. Load, idle, visible. Okay, the next one is client media equals and then some query like this. And so I'm going to do media then is query. I'm not going to demo this right now because you just saw me trying to come up with food names. You get it. With this client media query, it will hydrate the component and let the JavaScript load when the browser meets a certain media query. And this part I think is particularly cool. So let's just say instead of a counter, you have some kind of sidebar on your application. And in your sidebar with all of the rest of your layouts, you might be pulling for data every few seconds. Let's just say you're pulling in a new Pokemon every single time in your sidebar. If your page is nice and big and wide, you have that data loading, you're just like, "Ah, great, that's excellent. I love my beautiful sidebar." But let's just say you're on your phone and you can't actually see the sidebar, you're just scrolling through the page. You don't actually want that component in the sidebar to keep loading a bunch of different Pokemon that you're not even seeing. You're not looking at the sidebar, you're looking at the content on the page. This is where the media query can come in. You could say, okay, I only want the JavaScript to load for this particular component if a certain media query is hit. And so now you can have much faster and smoother layouts depending on the size of your browser or the content of your browser, all that media queries are able to be. And I think this is particularly powerful because media queries, they're very powerful in CSS, but they were kind of made for a different time where you were dealing with kind of just layouts and not all of the hydration that JavaScript does on a given page at any given time. And so by having media queries done on the JavaScript level outside of the CSS, you can do a lot of really interesting things with it. So anyway, that is what media query does is it hydrates the component when you have a certain media query that you pass in to this component. And then finally, the last one here is called only. Only is something that isn't actually recommended in the docs to use very much. It should be avoided, but it skips rendering at build time entirely. And so that means that the typical rendering of HTML, which again, like this whole thing happens at build time and the HTML is loaded and then the JavaScript is hydrated at any given point. That doesn't happen when you have only. All of it happens at runtime, not at build time. Sometimes that might be necessary where you just want it to run at build time. Let's just say you want to have an Astro component that has an entire single page application in that. You might want that type of only thing to occur. I think it's a good thing that it exists as an option, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, especially if you're building a mostly static site, but it's a possibility. Okay, to review. Oh, I know query isn't defined. Calm down. Okay. I'm just going to comment this better as a group. Okay. It's because it's HTML and I was doing this in a JavaScripty way. Okay. So I'm going to walk through each of these one last time. And again, let me know if you have any questions. So load, it means it runs on page load. Idle means that it runs as soon as the main thread is free. Visible means, once again, when the component is visible. Media, when it matches. Oh, look at when the media is loaded. No GitHub. When the given query matches. So, like when the given media query matches. And then only means that it only runs at runtime, not at build time. Not at build time. Okay, come back. You're okay. Errors, am I right? So anyway, these are the different times when components can be loaded with JavaScript on the page. I think that this is so cool because it just means that your bundles are so small when they actually go to your users. And I think that's just such a powerful thing. And it's so simple to make it just conditional like this. I love it. Okay. So anyway, that is how the rendering works in those in Astro for loading JavaScript. Now, once again, it renders React, Vue, Svelte, Preact, and I think a few other things too. It does a lot under the hood, and it does that by default. If you don't want it to, you can say, "Hey, only work with React, and that is totally fine because as you do run an Astro site at build time, it'll check, okay, are there any svelte things? Are there any view things? And it will load those renderers in your bundle, at least to make it work. And so you can say, I'm not using Vue, I'm not using Svelte, I'm only using React, and you can tell it to. There's a configuration for that. Or you could just use all of the frameworks. The world's your oyster. Okay. Also, it comes with a component that I think is incredible, and honestly, I'm very, very excited about it because it's so simple, and that is a markdown component. Because how many times have you tried to configure markdown in, again, React and in Vue and all this stuff, where you have to add all kinds of different loaders and stuff? Built into Astro is import markdown from, I think it's just Astro slash components. We'll see if he yells at me. Seems to be working. Great. That's it. Now you can use Markdown. And so let's just say I want to have inside of my body here a bunch of Markdown. Now I can be just like, but was she really here? Nobody knows. This is a list. Look at that. It's the exact same thing as the HTML, except it's Markdown. How neat is that? And it can render all kinds of really cool things. And so if I wanted to do, for example, a code sample, I'll just do console.log hello world. Oh, look at you. Once again, GitHub, you're trying to be helpful, but you're not. Look at that. It renders it. It's just done. I think that is so, so neat because it you can just use Markdown and it'll once again run at build time, not at runtime. And so it'll just render the HTML. And so you can import all kinds of Markdown content. Let's just say you get Markdown from a CMS that you're using. It just renders it and it's great. And I can't tell you this has really saved my bacon a few times to be able to just write stuff and not have to format everything. I think that's so, so powerful. Um, so anyway, that's the markdown component that I think that is very cool. So I've talked a lot about what Astro can render, but you might have noticed I made a demo page, and all of this has been living in a demo page. Um, Also, folks have said that the stream has paused. Let me know if it has unpaused because I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, reload and it's back. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. Um, we're now going to be talking about routing. Okay, so I made this demo file. It's in the pages directory, and it's just demo.astro in there. That creates a page, and it's done. You don't have to have Astro in here. If you wanted, you could actually do. Let's just say I'm gonna call it pizza cake. We're already doing this. Pizzacake.md. You can have a fully markdown page. Hurrah! Like that. And now, if I were to go to /pizzacake, supposedly it'll work. It's being a little slow. That's okay. But know that it should be a fully markdown page named Pizza Cake. There it is. Okay, sorry about that. That's just my browser. Okay, so hey, Pizza Cake, it's done. You have a fully markdown page. And so you don't have to use Astro components if you don't want to. Inside of the pages directory, anytime you put a .astro or a .md file, that automatically becomes a route. And so you can have fully markdown pages. You can do some styling and stuff if you'd like to make it all pretty, but it just works. And that is pretty nice. And if you want to point your routes at a different directory, you can. It's fully configurable. But I just think that part is really neat. And also, I'm going to change this pizzacake.md to a pizzacake.astro for a second. And I want to show something where, let's just say I want to do HTML, and then I'll do my head again, and I'll do a body and be like, wait, this is just area B. That's right. Now, uh, this is just area B. With Astro, everything is optional. And so if I wanted to just do plain HTML in a .astro file, I can, and it just works. If I wanted to do just area A for whatever reason, where I just do the front matter of let pizza cake equal forever. Um, if I wanted to get rid of all of this and just have the JavaScript run, that is allowed too. Everything is optional. Everything is configurable. It's very, very exciting. It just works. And that part is really, really neat. So you might be wondering though, what if I don't know all of my route names? Because right now I have index.astro, demo.astro, pizzacake.astro. But what if I want to, for example, have a folder in here called posts and I want to host my blog in here, but I don't want to name every single one of my blog posts in here. I could, if I don't want to pull from a CMS, I could just put markdown files in there and have it work. But what if I want to pull it from a CMS and I don't know all the route names or anything? Don't worry, it's covered for you. I'm going to call it blog.js, but it's going to be in brackets. And so in case you didn't see that, I'm actually going to just put it in here so you can see it loud and proud. It's going to be blog.js in the brackets here. So it's a funky name for a file. If you have used Next.js before, you might recognize this because this is how Next.js does their dynamic routes, where they name it inside of these brackets here. So now when I go to /posts and then / whatever the title is, it will match it. And I'm just going to keep typing inside of this doc so that way you can see nice and clearly what I'm talking about. So with this blog.js, and actually I'm going to do, cancel. It's going to be blog.astro. I think JS works, but I'm going to stick with the thing with the theme, blog.astro. It will just work. And so let's be, by saying that you have a dot /pages /posts and then this again, blogs.astro. Look at that. It's trying to make me do pizza cake. Good job, GitHub. Calm down. Okay. So by doing that, the types of routes that this matches is, let's just say it's pizzacake.com. This is my brand now. You have pizzacake.com /posts, and then anything in here, it could be one or pizzacake /posts /my great blog or whatever. It line break. It's going to match all of these different URLs based on this dynamic route name. And so it generates that at this path whenever you create the folder and then the dynamic route name. And so it's neat. And yes, I see that there's a question, does it have catch-all routes kind of like in Next.js? Yes, it does. Good question. Okay, so I'm going to go into this blog.astro thing in here and let's just say, okay, I'm going to say this is a great blog post or something. So inside of here, you could also create components within components. And so I could make a layout component that does some of this for me, but I'm busy talking too fast. And so I'm not doing that right now. And so inside of here, title, and I'm going to say my blog for now. And I'm going to say, this is a blog. Okay, cute. It works. So if I were to go to localhost 3000 /posts /whatever, it says that we need to actually populate this with data, which we expected. That's fine. This function getStaticPaths, believe it or not, I did want to show this to you, is getStaticPaths is a function which you might recognize from Next.js as well. It's a function that you run to generate the routes that you want to populate with your Astro applications. And this actually changed. And I actually don't know. I'm going to go to the docs really quick just because I'm curious now. And again, we're doing this live. This should be fine, right? Totally. Um, so with, uh with Astro, as it has been changing and morphing, there have been a lot of changes. It has definitely gotten much more steady over time where, there's not as many giant changes. They used to have a really cool collections API where you would generate a collections of pages, um, and voila, that's how it worked. Then they renamed it to Get Static Paths, and it makes a lot more sense. And it's something that I think, it makes a lot more sense, at least to someone like me coming from Next and coming from other frameworks. It's just better named and everything, but this is relatively new compared to what used to be. But anyway, with Get Static Paths, you export a function. Hey, I'm just gonna copy this here because I can. Try to stop me. You can't. You won't. Um, so you have all of these different parameters that you can pass into this URL, and those parameters, it takes in some kind of ID, and you can then use that to define your routes inside of here. And so let's just say that I want, I what were the pages that I defined? I think the pages I defined was like pizza cake and my cool blog or something. I don't know. Let's just say we'll do an ID of 1 for now, and then, props I'll pass to the page because I wanna show you how that works. Um, props I'll pass to the page, and I'll do pizza cake is true or something like that. No, I'll do pizza cake is forever. Okay, so this is confusing in how it's nested, so let me clean this up for you for a second. Okay, that. Stop it. Okay. So, why are you yelling at me? I'm just gonna take this away. We've got our params and our props. It's an array because it expects more than one. Let me close that, it's fine. Okay, so now when I go in here, this page is not found because it has an ID of 1. What if I did whatever? Cassidy, why do you ever do anything live? That's what I'm saying. Okay, so I'm gonna just do a little bit of live coding where I pretend I know what I'm doing and I promise I prepared for this talk. I'm going to pull in the ID from here and I'll do the ID is equal to astro.request.params. And in theory, I should be able to just get whatever from here. And so I'll do this as a blog ID. Thank you all so much for bearing with me. Cool, that's fine. What did I miss? This is, let's see, this is an array of objects to determine which paths will be predetermined by Astro. I already did that. This should be fine. I have a feeling that I am missing something dumb, and once again, I'm doing this live, so I'm sorry. Let me try 1. Cool. And what am I missing, Astro? Functions requires static site builder. I know that. Params is required. Props, yes. Totally. Did that too. Return an array of objects to determine which paths will be in there. Yeah, did that. Great. Pizzacake.com is already registered? Oh, that is a shame. Ah. Also, Ika, Astro only has static site generation, not SSR, so all routing and routing related data happens at build time. Is that correct? That is correct. Yes. Um, yes, that is absolutely correct. Um, should the params be blog whatever? Yeah, it should. That's absolutely what it should be because I'm a fool. Thank you so much. Okay, look at that. That's definitely what it is. Thank you, Probin. You're great. Okay, so that was just a file naming issue of my own issue. Okay, so cool. This is a blog. The blog's name is whatever. I'll do my blog named blog. Then be just like, this is a blog named blog in here. So much fun. Like that. Look at that. Okay, this is a blog domain, whatever. So much fun. Loving it. And so I can do this again where I could add another one in here. And so instead of the blog being named whatever, then I could say the blog is being named something that matters. And then pizza cake is here is questionable. Okay, and so now if I go to the route something that matters, this is a blog named Something That Matters. So much fun. Hey, okay, once again, thank you so much for saying blog because that's definitely what it was supposed to be. My bad. I apologize. Okay, so, anyway, that is how you do dynamic routes with Astro, and I promise it's if you actually know what you're doing and you're not live coding, it will be much easier for you than it was for me just now. But you can also take in parameters as well. And so notice how I did astro.request.params. I could also pull in pizza cake from astro.request.props. Okay. And then we could get pizza cake. It doesn't like that, does it? Once again, really, really proven to you that live demoing is not my expertise. Okay, it should be though. Also, all of my docs are in Spanish. That's fun. I'm going to pull in props one more time because I could have sworn that's all you do prop with props. It's just astro.props. That's my bad. Cool. Props. Hey, questionable. This is so much fun and it's questionable. I'm glad you think so. And then again, if I go to whatever, now pizza cake is forever. So anyway, that's how you pull in the request parameters and that's how you pull in the props to get dynamic data. And yes, there are catch-all routes as well. So, woo, okay. Those are the main features that I wanted to talk about outside of styling and state management. And I don't want to get too deep into that just because of time constraints and I want to make sure that I answer a bunch of your questions. But styling and state management, I think it's still relatively early in the implementation of Astro, but there's quite a bit supported already, which is exciting. Out of the box, global CSS is supported. And there's some limits around scoped CSS and CSS modules, but it works. And the fact that I can just use my CSS modules, it's great. And so, for example, I have my counter.jsx that I showed you before, back when I wasn't on a dynamic route. Down here, hey, and then also in demo, I'll go to that one since was she really here? Nobody knows. Okay. So we have our simple React counter that we showed before. That's this. But you'll notice that we have our styles coming from a CSS module. It's very basic. I added margins. I could do something like color is green. And look at that, the color is green. It does some nice hot module reloading, super, super fast. But yeah, CSS modules supported out of the box. There are other styling things that are also supported out of the box. I personally almost always just use CSS modules anyway, and so I'm happy to see it supported and it works. In terms of state management, it'll depend on the library that you're using. The context API for React works totally fine. Recoil works. Jotye works. Last I checked, I think Redux was only partially supported, but maybe it's fully supported now. Vue has Vuex support. Svelte has full Svelte stores support. All of the state management things are either supported, partially supported, or will be fully supported very, very soon, which is really, really exciting to see. Now, once again, on my GitHub, you saw the Astro Netlify starter. That's what I've been working with right here. But I also did a little Astro React and Vue demo in here, which I'm not going to, you can try to look it up if you want to. I mostly just want to show you the components. I made a Vue counter. See, I know how to use some Vue, where it's very simple. You do plus and minus, subtract and add, and it's a Vue component. And then I also did a React component, which is pretty much what you see here. Very simple React component. And then inside of the pages, I was able to make the Vue and React components live side by side. And because they can take in props, I could create a variable that passes something to view and react. So you could actually share state amongst view and react and have a full on application that uses both. I think that is so, so cool because there are some things that just each framework does a little bit better. The answer will always be it depends for what should I use for a particular thing. But for example, the way event bubbling works and how props are moved around and changed in the different frameworks and libraries, they it sometimes makes for a better mentality to use one over the other. For example, if I'm making a to-do list, if you'll forgive the very simple explanation, I might want a to-do list item to be able to delete itself. In React, you can't do that, but in Vue, you can. But overall, let's just say I want the entire to-do app to be in React. In theory, with Astro, depending on how I structure stuff, I could have an Astro component that has a React to-do list that utilizes Vue to-do items that can delete themselves. It's probably gonna be messy. That's probably definitely not recommended, but you can, and because you can, you definitely should. That's how Jurassic Park worked, right? Yeah, it applies. Um, do you want to use React's filter view? Yes, exactly. And it's really exciting to see, and Astro is built on this concept of islands architecture where you have different islands of information that kind of talk to each other, but sometimes they don't. And that's really where it shines, and I think it does a great job. And it renders very, very fast. And again, because there's not JavaScript by default on the client, it's just a really nice and speedy framework. Now, with the latest version of Astro coming out soon, I'm particularly excited because if you don't know, Astro is created by the creators of Snowpack. Great bundling tool, it's awesome. They're switching it to Vite next. And if you've used Vite, I used to think it was pronounced Vite. It is Vite because of French words for fast. Uh, it bundles so fast, and I've only played around with it a little bit with that with, like, the not even beta, alpha, extra early, uh, experimentations with the new Vite stuff, but it bundles so fast that it won't feel like your site has to do a really long build time, that it feels like it doesn't have to be a concern just because it goes so fast, and so, overall, I'm particularly happy with Astro. I think that it's something where it allows you to be very flexible, very configurable. Let's just say you want to add support for another framework that I haven't mentioned yet. You can. It adds all kinds of options for configuration and escape hatches for pulling in other options where the world's your oyster. And I'm really, really excited about that. And so I'm going to talk about one more example that I'm not going to build because we don't have time, but I want to kind of explain. So let's just say you have some application where you have a marketing site for your website, and then you want to have a fully dynamic application once a user logs in, and you want the user to be able to log in, log out, all that jazz. With Astro, that can all be one gigantic site, which is cool, while still having this islands architecture. So it feels like microservices or microsites, but it's still kind of monolithy, which is mind bendy, but particularly cool. Where let's just say Netlify as an example. I work there. I'll be a shill for a second. If you go to netlify.com, you'll run into our marketing site. Our marketing site is actually its own repo. It's built with, I think, 11t in Vue. And then when you log in, you go to the Netlify app, and that's its own separate repo. And that is using React. And it's using React and a lot of SPA and React router style of application. And we have all of these different repos for managing different parts of the marketing site, of the React app, the actual Netlify app, as well as the doc site, and that site is built in something else too. Lots of different frameworks and everything. With Astro, that could all live in one place if you wanted it to, and that part is particularly neat. And so I could make my marketing site, again, let's just say I have a very simple application. Let's just say I have a marketing page. I could create my login page where someone logs in. I could have someone log in and I could have a full React application on a single route or make multiple routes. And I could have my logout page, I could have my docs page, and it could all live in one application if I wanted it to. And the flexibility there, I think, is very, very neat because I could use Vue for my marketing site. I could use React for another one, and I'm starting to repeat myself, but I think that power in emphasizing it is particularly important because it's just neat. This is the type of stuff that I've been looking for in a framework for a long time, and so I'm excited about it. But I see that there are questions, and there are 10 of them, and so I'm going to start going through a bunch of them. And hello, Brian. Welcome back.
Hey, yeah, I was going to help you go do that, but you could do it yourself if you. Yeah. So first of all, that was awesome. I think everybody in the chat is like, they're all like, some of them might have left to go start coding their site in Astro right now. So let's see. I'm going to go through the questions with you if you don't mind.
Sure.
Does Astro yet have the functionality needed for on first visit rebuilding of pages that then become static? I think he's talking about like what they're talking about, like DPR
right.
type thing.
Yeah. For that kind of distributed persistent rendering, just distributed static generation, and all of those things where you can build like part of a static site without deploying the whole thing. It does not have that at this time. It just serves everything statically.
Okay. But you could use on-demand builder, right?
Still. Yes, that's true. You could use an on-demand builder on Netlify, and I think that Cloudflare is starting to implement something like that too, but I'm not sure where you could implement something like that, an on-demand builder function that would build a page separately.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I wonder. I mean, everybody seems to be adding this, so it seems to be like something that we can probably expect to be coming soon.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. We just need to agree on a term because now we're DPR, DSG, and ISR, right?
Yeah. I think we've definitely been talking about combining the DPR and DSG ones and just going in that direction. But
I've started just calling it deferred rendering, which is
that's
kind of like, to me, it's like, okay, all of them are just like render it later, right? So anyway,
right.
Okay, so oops, I should have done this and I didn't. Why would I use this over Lemony? What are the benefits compared to other static site generators?
So I think I kind of emphasize this more towards the end here, where there's no need to configure any frameworks that you might want to use with it. So you don't need to configure Vue or React or Svelte or Preact or anything with it. It just automatically works, and you can just run with it. You can add whatever opinions you want to it, and it will work. And so that is what's cool about it is it's both lets you have opinions, or it could have opinions for you. And I think that's great. And using something like this over Eleventy, it really does come down to preference. If you want to use Eleventy, go for it. It's a great framework. I have no qualms with it, but I like that so much is built in that if anything, I can just take things away from it and add stuff as needed.
There's what's that project for Eleventy that kind of is like an Astro?
Yeah, it's got a funny name.
Yes,
it's like Sproing or something. It's not, but it's a funny name like that.
Yeah. The guy who created it was even speaking at Jamstack.conf, and now I'm totally blank.
It was Ben, right?
I think, yes, it is Ben. Ben Holmes, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Ben Holmes, and then I'm just gonna find it right now. Might as well.
Slinkity. Somebody put it on.
Slinkity. That's what Slinkity.
So I guess if you want to use Eleventy, you could use Slinkity. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So next question is, how does this compare to something like Svelte?
once again, and this might have been a question earlier because I've kind of touched on it, but basically, and also all the people in the chat are like, "Come on, it's Slinkity." Thank you. Um, Comparing it to something like Svelte, it lets you use Svelte. If you want to just use Svelte, you can, and that would be totally cool. But then you're just using Svelte. This lets you use anything that you want.
Right. How does Astro work with Gatsby and Next? I'm
It
guessing. I mean, really,
doesn't.
it's separate. It's a different. It's a
It's a
different thing.
different approach.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not. You wouldn't combine it.
Right. You wouldn't combine it. Gatsby and Next are specifically React frameworks. Astro is a framework that can use React or any of these other frameworks or libraries.
Yeah, I'm super excited that because I've like stuck with some of the more traditional. Like I still use Hugo a lot. In fact, the site's built on with Hugo, but partly because I just didn't want to shove a JavaScript framework down people's throats when like I didn't really need it. There's only a minimal amount of JavaScript going on. I mean, there's a login and some other stuff. But it's like I don't need a whole framework for that. So this is really exciting for me. Does Astro work with React components that use context?
Yes. It fully supports the context API and state sharing with context.
Awesome. Easy answer.
Yeah.
Can we use Netlify on-demand builders with Astro? Yeah, we answered that. Yes, you can. I mean, it's not. There's nothing built in.
I was going to say it's not built in, but maybe that could be a feature request for the team.
Awesome. Yeah. Does Markdown the component? Okay. So
highlight
does
programming language?
Yeah. So I think it does, right?
I think it does. I probably should have demoed that. I'm pretty sure that it does, and then I think you can customize that as well.
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned it. It uses the code coloring that I usually use, and I'm blanking on it. But clearly, I'm blanking on everything. I can't remember names of anything today.
That's what happens when you're in front of people.
Good thing I remembered your name because I had to introduce you and everything.
Yeah. Ika said a very good comment. Not managing a Webpack config is an incentive. Correct.
Yes.
Like you can set up a config that does a bunch of stuff. I love not having to.
Yeah. I think just even like being able to use Markdown without having to modify a config and create a loader and all this other stuff, it's just, the number of times I've done that, it's like, why? Why do I have to do this? It seems like boilerplate. It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Prism is the CSS.
Yeah. And there's also Shiki. I think there's one. And there's Highlighter. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Sarah says Prism, just be sure to add a theme.
Right. So it is built in, I guess. How would you make an API request to iterate over your blogs? Use fetch in the front matter?
Yes. Fetch in the front matter. Done.
Okay, so the front matter, you can put whatever JavaScript is, and there's no limitations on what you can.
Full JavaScript expressions totally work.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, it's so nice and simple, or rather intuitive for anyone who has done web dev.
Right. Nick asks, is there any image optimization or compression at build time?
I don't think so built in. No, but what I would suggest to you, Nick, is to check out something like Cloudinary. I appreciate the concept of image optimization, compression, and stuff at build time, but if you use something like Cloudinary as a service that does that as their jobs, then you don't have to manage your own images. They do all of the compression and optimization. You just query it from their APIs. That's my personal preference, but that's all about the decoupling of it all.
Yep. I've used Cloudinary myself, but I actually do use, like on this side, I use Hugo's like asset management for all the images, just because I used to have to resize everything, and it's easy enough. I mean, I don't have, I don't have most of the images, like it's just the banner, so like it just does all the different sizes for me.
Yeah, and Netlify does have a build plugin for that kind of stuff. Thank you, Lindsay, for the plug, because probably should have mentioned that one too. But then also like with some other frameworks where it's built in, I won't throw shade at specific names. I don't particularly like their implementations of it out of the box, where it works for developers mostly, but then if JavaScript is disabled for some reason or something like that, it kind of falls apart. And so, yeah, that's why I like not doing it in my own code base.
Yeah, I've tried to get it working in Next and constant. I felt like I'm banging. I'm like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
I'm like looking at the directions. I'm like, it just errors out every freaking time. Um,
Yeah.
So anyway,
Anyway,
uh, is it possible to do cross-component props communication, say between a React and a Svelte component? Hmm.
so you couldn't do like a React component inside of Svelte at this point, but kind of like what I showed with my Vue and React demo, you can have an Astro component that passes variables to each of those components, and they live inside of the Astro page or the Astro component. And so, yes, it's funky, but it's possible.
Okay, that should be maybe Deepak. You can do a blog post about this. I'd love to hear somebody experiment with this.
Yeah.
Sorry, like I said, no, you said earlier, but what is the repo link? So I can see a few with Astro in the title.
Oh yes, it's the Netlify starter is what I've been working with.
Yeah, okay.
And
And I
the
think the one
reason
that,
why it's the starter is if you go into the README, it has like a command where you can use this as a template. And the
mhm.
reason why you could use it as a template is if you click deploy to Netlify, or if you run it for whatever reason, it has the netlify.toml built in, which has the automatic build commands that make it just work without any config on Netlify to run.
Okay. And we're down to the last question. Does Astro write inline style or ship external CSS file?
Um, I always just use CSS modules for pretty much everything. But hey, look at that. There's a guide on styling that talks about this in the Astro docs. If you go to docs.astro.build, that will dive into that a bit deeper. But it supports lots of things, and I think that it ships external CSS files, if I'm thinking correctly.
Okay. All right. So that's all the questions. That was awesome. I think I clearly, I'm excited to try it. Everybody in the chat seems excited to try it. So I think we're all just very excited now.
Yeah, it's just so fun.
It does seem fun. I have like personally, I'm like, okay, first I'm going to redo my crappy old Jekyll blog. Nothing against Jekyll. I still think Jekyll's great, but it's just that my blog is old and crappy.
Yeah,
Um,
I get it. I have an old blog in Jekyll that's sorely neglected.
yes. And then I was thinking like on a bigger, like, can I redo CFE.dev with it? It would be awesome. So I
Yeah,
think, it seems like a perfect kind of fit for what that site does. So yeah. Anyway, when I
yeah.
find all that
Everyone
free
who
time,
is, yeah, everyone, all that free time. All of my friends that I've shared Astro with or who I've seen play with Astro has just completely fallen in love with it because it just works and is so simple. And I think on my team, a grand majority of my team's demos are just using Astro now because some do specialize in React, some specialize in Vue and stuff like that. But they can say, oh, I'll just whip this up here, and then they can share the repo with the team, and they can just use the same code base and write in what they're comfortable in, and it's great.
yeah, that's awesome.